At Centurion Trust Bank, a regular workday begins as usual. One of the managers strolls into the kitchen to grab a coffee, but as he pours his drink, flashes of gunfire flicker in his mind, followed by the distant wail of police sirens outside. Shaking off the unease, he heads to the main hall just as Detective Tom Eager enters the building. Everything appears ordinary. Security guards watch over the floor, clerks shuffle through stacks of paperwork, and customers sit quietly waiting their turn. A young woman enters, catching the attention of a clerk who idly listens to the street noise. The manager soon calls the woman, Leah Dillon, into his office for a meeting, while Detective Eager hands a deposit slip to a teller named Susan. Eager chats with Susan, making lighthearted jokes about fires and marshmallows. Meanwhile, another woman in the hall begins arguing loudly with the cashier, Mary, about what she calls illegal penalties. Mary does her best to calm her down, promising to check the accounts. In his office, the manager learns Leah is applying for a position at the bank. Her resume is impressive, listing work at major corporations, though there's a gap in her employment history. Leah explains that she had been teaching English to children in a Mexican parish, but had to return home due to a family illness. Despite her reassurances, the manager has a few more questions. Outside, Eager walks past 3 firefighters inspecting their equipment before hopping into his partner's car. Back inside, the disruptive visitor grows louder, demanding to see the manager. Susan and a security guard step in, attempting to diffuse the tension. The rest of the staff exchange uneasy glances as the argument escalates. Leah assures the manager that she's not easily rattled, just as the angry visitor demands answers. Susan then points out that the woman isn't even a client of the bank. The scene attracts a few more clerks, all trying to calm things down. Suddenly, 3 firefighters enter the bank. In the chaos, the disruptive visitor lashes out, striking a security guard hard in the face. As the guard collapses, Leah pulls out a gun, turning it on the assistant manager. In an instant, everything changes. The guard at the door moves to sound the alarm, but is knocked out cold by one of the firefighters who, it turns out, are part of the heist. The bank erupts into chaos as the robbers take control. They cover everyone's heads with bags, while the visitor, revealed to be Leah's sister, V, collects phones from the terrified hostages. Another robber sprays paint over the security cameras, while a third forces a guard to respond to a police inquiry, assuring them everything inside is fine. Outside, Eager's radio crackles, catching his attention. Suspicious, he decides to head back to the bank. Inside, the robbers push forward with their plan. Leah warns the assistant manager not to try anything heroic, reminding him that his family's safety depends on his cooperation. V, meanwhile, begins to clash with the others, ignoring their agreement not to harm anyone. One of the robbers orders the cashiers to open the vault, but the terrified employees fumble with the locks. When the vault finally opens, it holds just over $70,000. The group argues heatedly about what to do next. Leah insists they leave before things spiral further, but Cyrus, one of the robbers, refuses to leave empty-handed. He raises his weapon and tensions boil over. The assistant manager, desperate to end the chaos, offers his help. He reveals where the bank's alarm button is located and promises to disable it, on the condition that no one else gets hurt. V reluctantly agrees. With the alarm deactivated, the assistant manager directs them to a larger vault in the basement, which holds $6 million. V and another robber, Kramer, head downstairs to retrieve the cash, instructing Michael, another accomplice, to stay upstairs and monitor the hostages through the cameras. Michael grows irritated as the hostages whisper among themselves. When one of them removes their bag, he locks them in the smaller vault to silence them. In the basement, V and Kramer find the vault, a massive metal door with wheel locks. Kramer estimates it will take at least 20 minutes to break in. Frustrated, V leaves him to work and begins exploring the basement. Upstairs, the lights begin to flicker ominously. Leah, suspicious, tells Cyrus to keep an eye on the assistant manager while she checks on the hostages. Susan peeked outside, noticing a cluster of police cars parked in front of the bank. The security guard's radio buzzed with questions, but no clear answers came through. Inside, Michael escorted Susan to the restroom, his movements tense. Sensing his unease, Susan tried to strike up a conversation. Flustered, Michael admitted he'd feel equally uncomfortable under watchful eyes. Leaving her in the stall, he wandered to the sink, nervously washing his hands, his chatter a mix of nerves and distraction. She noticed his bandaged finger still bleeding slightly and pressed him again. "You're not a bad person," she insisted. Michael hesitated before asking if she had siblings she cared about. Realizing he'd let his guard down, he quickly clammed up, ordering her back to the hall. Leah, pacing upstairs, scowled as Michael returned with Susan. "Stick to the plan," she snapped, her anxiety mounting. She couldn't figure out how the police had caught on so quickly. Down in the basement, Kramer worked on cracking the vault door, sweat dripping from his forehead. Each movement of his tools brought him closer, but the flickering lights unnerved him. Nearby, V wandered through the dusty storage rooms, freezing when she thought she saw a face staring back at her in the shadows. Michael headed to another corner of the basement. Back at the vault, Kramer's patience paid off as the lock finally gave way. But as the heavy door creaked open, the flickering lights grew erratic. In the dim corridor, two shadowy figures appeared, their faces hidden under filthy sacks, freshly spawned from Mordor. Kramer froze, reaching for his weapon, but the figures multiplied, closing in. He panicked, calling for help over the radio. But Leah and V couldn't respond. The surveillance feed showed only Kramer alone. The lights cut out entirely, leaving the basement in darkness. When they flickered back on, Kramer was gone. Leah and V tried desperately to reach him, but the radio remained silent. Upstairs, Cyrus guarded the hostages, his rifle resting across his lap. Suddenly, the lights flickered again, and the door to the hostage room slammed shut, trapping V inside. Cyrus scanned the room, his eyes narrowing on a figure wearing a white mask among the hostages. Gripping his rifle tightly, he approached, but before he could act, screams erupted. The masked figure lunged, shoving the barrel of the rifle into Cyrus's mouth. When the lights came back on, Cyrus was gone, and the hostages sat silently as if nothing had happened. Michael, now deep in the basement, stumbled across Kramer tied to a chair, his face pale, his eyes gouged out. Kramer begged Michael not to let them take him before grabbing a drill and driving it into his own skull. Horrified, Michael fled. Leah's frustration boiled over. She grabbed the assistant manager, demanding to know who had tipped off the police. He stammered that he didn't know, but Leah wasn't convinced. At that moment, the phone rang. Detective Eager was on the line, his voice calm but firm. "Let's end this peacefully," he said. Leah, desperate to regain control, demanded 30 minutes or she'd start killing hostages. V returned from the basement holding a bag of money. She was informed of Kramer's death and the growing chaos but shrugged it off. "We've got what we came for," she said. Leah examined the bills and froze. Every single one was dated 1982. As tensions escalated, a red laser sight appeared on V's chest. A shot shattered the window, but Leah tackled her sister, saving her life. The assistant manager whispered to V, planting seeds of doubt about Leah's leadership. V brushed him off, but the cracks in their unity were showing. Michael, meanwhile, finished cutting into the pipeline, only to hear faint cries for help. He followed the sound and found a woman lying on the floor. As he approached, her face twisted into that of a charred corpse, her hand reaching for him. Michael ran, terror gripping him. Upstairs, Leah interrogated Susan again. This time, Susan revealed a chilling story from 1982. A man had tried to rob the bank, taking hostages and forcing them to kill one another. Leah dismissed the tale as nonsense and smashed a lamp in frustration, threatening Susan to stay silent. The phone rang again. Leah picked it up, her heart racing. Eager's calm voice returned, urging her to let the hostages go. Leah glanced out the window and saw the police preparing to storm the building. She turned back to the phone, replaying Susan's story in her mind, wondering if there was some truth to it. V, searching for Cyrus, found his headless body in the basement. Shaken but determined, she continued her search for Michael. She found him pouring gasoline on the floor, his face pale and haunted. "We need to leave," he begged her. "This place isn't right." V hesitated, but eventually found the exit. Michael stayed behind, igniting the gasoline and setting the basement ablaze in an attempt to destroy whatever was pursuing them. Upstairs, the fire alarm blared. Leah released the hostages, grabbed the bag of money, and limped toward the basement despite warnings from the security officer. As police stormed the building, Leah was shot in the leg but managed to stumble down to the pipeline. Michael appeared, stopping her before she could enter. "They're in there," he warned, his voice shaking. Leah, desperate and defiant, pushed past him toward the old vault. Inside, the ghosts of the hostages appeared, their hollow eyes fixed on her. The vault door began to close, sealing her in, but Michael arrived just in time, dragging her out. He shoved her toward the pipeline, shouting for her to run. Leah hesitated, looking back at her brother one last time. He stood his ground, holding a lighter and surrounded by the apparitions. Leah crawled through the pipeline, her path lit by the fire Michael had started. As she emerged into the fresh air, the next morning, she drove down a dirt road, the radio playing a news report about the robbery and the fire. The announcer stated that all the robbers had perished in the blaze. Suddenly, Leah slammed on the brakes. Leah holds up the bag of money, her hands trembling. V stares at it, piecing together the grim truth. When she realizes Michael is dead, the sisters break down, their grief spilling out in heavy sobs as they mourn their brother. Meanwhile, Detective Eager dives deeper into the case. He reviews security footage of the robbers' deaths, but the only faces visible are the robbers themselves. No one can identify the assistant manager who had led them to the old vault. Witnesses are questioned about the mysterious man with intricate knowledge of the bank's security system, but no one remembers him. Susan, a bank employee of 10 years, is adamant she's never seen such a person, until she spots a photo on the wall at the police station. Her face pales as she points to the picture. "That's him," she whispers. The man in the photo had been a victim of the 1982 bank robbery, the same man who made the infamous call for help before being shot dead. In the present, Leah and V are trying to escape. Leah turns the key in the ignition, but the car won't start. Frustrated, V steps out to check the hood. Suddenly, the radio crackles to life, playing a song that was a hit during the 1982 robbery. Leah's stomach twists in fear as she watches V slam the hood shut, and then she sees him, the man in the mask. He's standing silently behind V, and I stand behind you and whisper silently in your ear. Watch these recaps on the right next, my friend. Subscribe to return to the lounge in the future. Grab your popcorn, enjoy yourself, and see you soon, my friend.